Every single thing that's ever happened to your money, good or bad, can be traced back to one single concept. And nobody ever sits you down and explains this concept properly. Not your parents, not your school, not your bank, not your financial advisor. If they ever got around to explaining it at all, they did it with a boring formula and a chart that put you to sleep in about 40 seconds. Here's the part that should break your brain. The people who end up wealthy and the people who end up broke are often doing the exact same thing with money. They're borrowing it, they're saving it, they're spending it. But the wealthy people have this one concept working for them and the broke people have it working against them. Same action, opposite result. And the difference between those two groups is not intelligence. It's not discipline. It's not luck. It's understanding one single thing. That thing is interest. I'm Mr. Bandage. I patch up financial wounds for a living, and 90% of the wounds I see trace back to one root cause. The person didn't understand how interest really works. Not the textbook definition. Not the Wikipedia page. The actual, in-your-wallet, month-after-month reality of what interest does to human beings. If you've ever wondered why you feel like you're running on a treadmill with your money, this is why. Stick around. This one video will change how you look at every financial decision you make for the rest of your life. And if you want more straight talk like this, hit subscribe. Quick note before we start. This is education, not financial advice. Do your own homework before any big money moves. Here's what we're going to do today. I'm going to explain interest in a way that actually sticks. Then I'll show you how it works on the debt side. Then I'll show you how it works on the savings and investing side. And by the end, you'll see why this one concept is the closest thing to a master key that exists in personal finance. You'll make better decisions immediately. Let's start with the simplest possible definition. Interest is rent. That's it. That's the whole concept. Interest is the rent somebody charges you for using their money, or the rent you charge somebody for using yours. When you borrow money from a bank, the bank is lending you something that belongs to them. They want something in return for letting you use it. That something is interest. You pay them rent measured as a percentage of the money you borrowed, usually expressed per year. When you put money in a savings account, you are lending your money to the bank. They're using it to make loans to other people. They pay you rent for the privilege of holding your money. That rent is also called interest. Same concept. Two directions. Either you're paying rent on someone else's money or you're collecting rent on yours. Now here's where most people stop thinking about it. They figure, okay, rent on money, got it, moving on. That's exactly the mistake. Because interest has one feature that makes it completely different from any other rent you've ever paid in your life. Interest compounds. Here's the part that breaks everything. When you rent an apartment, the rent doesn't grow while you sleep. You pay $1,000 this month. You pay $1,000 next month. Predictable, linear, boring. Interest does not behave like that. Interest grows on top of itself. The rent you didn't pay this month gets added to the balance. Next month, you pay rent on the original balance plus the rent you didn't pay. The month after that, you pay rent on all of it combined. Let me make that concrete. Imagine you owe $1,000 on a credit card at 20% interest. In year one, you owe $200 of interest. Now imagine you don't pay that interest. In year two, you're not paying interest on $1,000 anymore. You're paying interest on $1,200, which means year two you owe $240 of interest. Year three, $288. And it keeps accelerating. The longer you leave it, the faster the monster grows. This is why interest is the single most important concept in personal finance. Because it doesn't add, it multiplies. It's not a straight line, it's a curve. And the curve gets steeper the longer it runs. Here's where it gets twisted. The same mechanism that destroys people who borrow at high interest is the exact mechanism that makes other people wealthy. They're not in different games. They're in the same game. They just sit on opposite sides of the table. Let me introduce you to Sarah. Sarah is 28 years old, works as a marketing manager, makes $72,000 a year. She carries a credit card balance of $5,000. She pays the minimum every month because that's what she was told is fine. The card charges her 22% interest, which is roughly the American average right now. Here's what Sarah doesn't realize. On that $5,000 balance, paying the minimum, it will take her approximately 20 years to pay it off. 20 years. And during those 20 years, she will pay close to $7,000 in interest on a $5,000 balance. She borrowed $5,000. She will pay back almost $12,000. And every single minimum payment she makes, about 92 cents of every dollar is going to the bank as rent. Only 8 cents is actually reducing what she owes. This is not because Sarah is irresponsible. She's paying her bill on time every month. She's doing what she was told. She's just doing it on the wrong side of the compounding curve. Now here's the twist nobody tells you. Take that same Sarah, same age, same job, same $72,000 income. Instead of carrying a credit card balance, she invests $200 a month into a boring index fund. Same $200 she would have been paying the credit card company as rent, but now she's collecting rent instead of paying it. The stock market's long-term average return is roughly 10% a year, historically. Let's be conservative and say she earns 8%. After 20 years, Sarah's $200 monthly contribution has grown to about $118,000. She put in $48,000 of her own money over those 20 years. The other $70,000 came from interest, compounded on top of itself, year after year, same person, same $200 a month, two completely different outcomes. One path leaves her paying $12,000 for a $5,000 purchase. The other path leaves her with over $100,000 in assets. The difference is not her. The difference is which side of interest she's standing on. Here's the trap nobody sees coming. Interest is not loud. It doesn't announce itself. You never get a notification that says, "Congratulations, you just lost $47 to compounding this month." It just happens, quietly, invisibly, a little bit every single day while you're driving to work, while you're making dinner, while you're sleeping. Interest runs 24/7, 365 days a year. It never takes a day off. This is why most people underestimate it for most of their lives. The damage or the growth in any single month looks tiny. $10 here, $40 there, feels like it doesn't matter. The problem is that interest is not really a monthly phenomenon. It's a decade phenomenon. You don't see the effect of interest in a month. You see it in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. And by the time you can see it clearly in your own life, it has already either crushed you or made you wealthy. There's no in between. Now here's what changes everything. Once you understand that interest is just rent on money and that it compounds, you can read almost every financial product in the world. A mortgage is interest. You're renting the bank's money to buy a house. At 6.5% interest over 30 years on a $400,000 loan, you will pay back roughly $510,000 in interest, more than the price of the house itself. That's rent. That's what you pay the bank for holding your hand while you own the place. A car loan is interest. At 7% over 7 years on a $40,000 car, you'll pay about $10,000 in interest. Interest that would not exist if you had paid cash. That $10,000 is just rent. A student loan is interest. Federal loans sit around 7%. Private loans go higher. A $60,000 student loan, paid over 10 years at 7%, costs you about $23,000 in interest. That $23,000 is rent on the money you borrowed to get educated. A credit card is interest on steroids, 20+% compounding daily on whatever balance you didn't pay off last month. This is why credit card debt is the debt that eats people alive, not because it's evil, because the interest rate is high and it's compounding against you every single night. On the flip side, a savings account is interest. You are the landlord. The bank is renting your money. A good high-yield savings account pays around 4% right now. That means for every $10,000 you park there, you collect about $400 a year in rent. Not life-changing, but real, and zero risk. A retirement account is interest. You put money into index funds. The companies in those funds produce profits. Some of those profits are paid back to you as dividends and reinvested. The stocks also grow in value. All of that growth compounds year after year after year. 10% average historical return on the broad U.S. market, which means roughly 7 times your money every 20 years on average. A rental property is interest in disguise. The tenant pays you rent, which in most cases is higher than the mortgage payment you owe. The difference is effectively interest earned on the money you put into the down payment. Plus, the property itself appreciates over time. Compounding. You might be thinking, hold on, investing is risky. It's not the same as putting money in a bank. Here's why that's not the full picture. Yes, investments fluctuate. The stock market can drop 30% in a year, but here's the thing. Over 10-year periods, the U.S. stock market has historically gone up about 95% of the time. Over 20-year periods, 100% of the time. The short term is chaos. The long term is not. Compounding happens regardless of short-term noise because the time horizon is long enough for the noise to average out. And here's where the math gets brutal. Most Americans are on the wrong side of compounding for most of their working lives because the order of operations most people follow is backwards. They spend first, then save whatever's left, which is usually nothing, which means they borrow to make up the difference, which means they pay rent on money instead of collecting it, for decades. And they wonder why, despite working hard and earning decent incomes, they feel like they can never get ahead. The truth is they can't, not because they're lazy, because the math is stacked against them. They are paying compounding interest on the borrowing side while collecting almost nothing on the saving side. The gap widens every year, not linearly, exponentially. Here's the part I want you to really hear. Once you understand this, the playbook for getting rich is not a secret. It's not complicated. The playbook is this. Get on the collecting side of interest as much as you can, as early as you can, for as long as you can. And get off the paying side of interest as fast as you can, especially on high-interest debt. That's it. That's the whole game. If you have high-interest debt, especially credit card debt above 15%, paying that down is mathematically better than almost any investment you could make. Because paying off a 22% credit card is the same as earning a 22% risk-free return. Nobody on Wall Street can offer you that. But your credit card is offering you the equivalent of it every month you carry a balance. If you don't have high-interest debt, the next play is to start collecting interest as aggressively as you can. Not in a checking account, which pays nothing. In a high-yield savings account for emergency money, which pays around 4%. And in a tax-advantaged retirement account for long-term money, which invests in the market, which has historically grown at roughly 10% per year over long periods. The earlier you start, the less money you actually have to contribute, because time is doing the heavy lifting. Somebody who starts investing $200 a month at age 25 will end up with more money at 65 than somebody who starts investing $600 a month at 40. The person starting at 25 invested less of their own money. Time did the rest. That is compounding. That is the magic. You are not behind because you're bad with money. You are not behind because you lack willpower. You are behind because nobody explained this mechanism to you clearly at a young enough age for you to actually use it. The entire financial education system in this country either skips this completely or buries it under formulas that make your eyes glaze over. That's not your failure. That's the system's failure, and you just close the gap. If you take one thing from this video, take this. Every dollar you have right now is either earning you rent or being used to pay rent. There is no neutral. There is no in between. Money is always doing one or the other. Your job is to tilt the balance, slowly, consistently, over years, toward the collecting side and away from the paying side. You don't need to be smart. You don't need to time the market. You don't need a secret. You just need to understand that interest is rent on money, that it compounds, and that you want to be the landlord, not the tenant. If this video helped you see things differently, drop a like. It actually matters more than you'd think. And if you want more straight talk about your money, hit subscribe. Mr. Bandage drops a new video every single day. I'll see you tomorrow with another one. Money hurts. I help.